Hi, everyone. My name is Nondini. I'm the president and CEO of the Society of Grownups, but I'm really honored to be here today because I am also the alumni speaker. I'm Wellesley College class of 2002. So you're probably wondering what I'm doing here. And I'm here to talk about money, but more specifically, why we don't talk about money and what's at stake by not having that conversation. So money is a really interesting concept, and it's an interesting idea. We think about it in terms of dollars and cents. We think about it in terms of rationality. We think about it in terms of balances and how much we have and how much we want. But really, money is much more than that. It's deeply rooted in our own histories. It's rooted in our family. It's rooted in our dreams, in our inspiration, in our aspirations, in our future, and our insecurities. So just having a conversation about money that is just focused on dollars actually misses the entire point. We need to have a holistic conversation about it and actually recognize the fact that it is so deeply rooted. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own experience. This is a picture of me and my dad in the early 80s. And my parents and I, we emigrated to the United States when I was just shy of my 2nd birthday. And my parents were educated in Russia, and we also are originally from Bangladesh. And so I share that with you because we were a small family that came to the United States, and my father was supporting us with $13,000 a year, which even in 1982 and 1983 is not a lot of money. And so I remember we were sitting around the dining table, and there were always 3 languages that were being spoken interchangeably: Bengali, English, and Russian. But Russian was the secret language. It was the language that my parents spoke to one another in when they didn't want anyone else to understand. And so I remember sitting there, and we would be having a conversation, and all of a sudden, they would turn to one another, and they would start speaking in Russian. And I knew that it was one of 2 things. 1, I was in trouble. Or 2, they were talking about money. And so from early on, I recognized the fact that money was something that was secretive and that you didn't really talk openly about it. And then there were other experiences too early on. Like, for example, I remember we had some family friends that came over, and they said, "Oh, you have a beautiful home. How much did you pay for this house?" And I remember the look my mom gave my dad. And I remember they stayed, they left, and afterwards she said, "They're never coming over again for dinner." And so I remember thinking, oh, okay, so money is a secret, and if you talk about it, and if you ask about it, you don't get invited over for dinner. And so these attitudes persisted. So this is me and a group of my friends from my very first year here at Wellesley College. So we have actually grown up together. We've spent our entire adult lives together, and we have talked about everything. We know each other's dating histories. We know about religious things. We've had conversations about politics. Now, for some reason, we seem to be talking and oversharing a lot about health. There's a lot of things that we've actually talked about. But yet, although we've been a part of each other's lives during this really critical time, the one thing that we've never talked about is money. And there's a financial underpinning to every single major life decision. Yet I have no idea how much money my friends make, or what their comfort level is with debt, or the trouble that they've had, or how much they think they should spend on a house, or how much they should spend on a car. And here's the thing. If knowledge is power and we're unable to have that conversation, where does that really leave us? So money is this last taboo. We talk about so many things in our society, but we don't talk about this. And there's a reason for that. There's a real fear of judgment whenever you talk about money. How many of you have said, "Oh, she is irresponsible. She does not know how to manage her money"? Or, yeah, I see hands going up, right? Or that person can't actually afford to buy this or do that. But what's worse is that we turn that judgmental voice on ourselves, and we start to actually internalize some of those judgments. So we're making all of these assessments based on something that no one has really talked about and no one has really taught how to handle effectively. So we have a financial illiteracy crisis in this country. We have an entire generation of millennials who are coming of age. There's 83.5 million millennials in the United States. They just outpaced the baby boomers as the largest generation, and they are coming face to face with some very, very harsh realities. Unprecedented levels of student loan debt, for one. The class of 2015 graduated on average with $35,000 in student loan debt. 10 or 15 years before that, it was only $10,000. There is a huge difference between those numbers. This is also a generation that is trying to do the regular things like get a job or buy a home or have fun with their friends and travel, yet they are also bombarded with multiple messages that say that they will never be as successful as what their parents have been able to accomplish. And yet, we still don't talk about this. That's where the Society of Grownups comes in. So the Society of Grownups, we started that and opened it 14 months ago. And it was all based on this very radical experiment. What if we were able to actually build community around something that has been historically so taboo? What if we actually opened up the conversation, maybe with the help of a little wine, but also allowed for people to ask questions to professionals and to one another? And that concept has really been resonating. In fact, when I first talked about what the vision was for the Society of Grownups, I was never met by anyone who said, that's not needed, or we don't need that. In fact, what I was met with were a lot of people who said, I want to go there, I want to send my friend there, or I want to send my kid there. So I'm going to share some stories with you. So we actually had a woman, she's in her early 30s, and this is what she said. It's hard to balance three things at once. She said, I've tried a lot of different things to actually get my finances together and save for things that are important in my life. And this is the first time I have felt so accomplished in so little time and feel like I can actually follow through and do this, exclamation point. So I bring up the exclamation point because that's really important. She has a sense of empowerment and she has a sense of agency around something that she's always felt really uncomfortable about. And there is a network effect that is innate in that. When you start with one person, when you start with one conversation, when you start with one confident person, you can actually start to spread that, and you can create a groundswell. We also had a young couple that came in to see us, and they're expecting, and they have something called the house fund. And so they are shunting all of their extra dollars, all of their money into that house fund. Yet, when we actually started the discovery process of understanding why they were doing it, we realized something. They don't actually want to buy a house. They felt like they had to. They felt that because they were starting a family and they couldn't afford to buy in the city, they should buy and then they should buy in the suburbs. But when you actually talk to them about the things that they like, the things that bring them joy in their lives, they talked about their local coffee shop, they talked about their commute to work, they talked about their urban lifestyle. And so when we were able to actually say to them, listen, it's not financially irresponsible for you to continue to rent on a long-term basis. There was a freedom that came with that. The ability to actually be able to live life on your own terms. We also know that money plays a very, very important role in intimate relationships. And so it was really interesting. We had a young woman, she's very excited. She's getting married, And she and her fiance have talked about everything. They've talked about the kind of house they want to live in. They've talked about their fictional children, where they're going to send them to school. Yet she basically said to us, I have no idea financially what he's bringing to the table. I mean, he could be coming into this relationship with a ton of student loan debt, and that's okay. But I don't even know how to have that conversation. And so by really talking to her and helping her to understand how to open up that conversation, we were able to hopefully set them up for a more successful marriage. And those are things that really count and that are intimate and extremely important. So the question really is, who will you look to? So some of you will look to professors, and some of you will look to your friends. Some of you will look to your parents. Some of you will just do a lot of online research, or you'll go to a professional. And the truth is that there is no simple answer for this. What I would say is that just make sure that you are asking the right questions. That whoever it is that you are interacting with has your best interests in mind. Even if you're paying someone, make sure you're asking the right questions like, how are they actually getting compensated? And make sure that you are an active participant in that conversation. Today, the people that I go to talk about money, I go to a certified financial planner who's very patient with me and answers a lot of my questions, and also is firm enough to say every once in a while, that's not gonna happen this year. That's something you should think about for next year. But I also go to my family. So 30 plus years later, I'm really happy to say that my parents and my brother, who are an endless source of support for me, are also the people that I can go to and have this conversation. When we talk about what that next job should be, when we talk about how much we should be negotiating for, when we talk about buying a place, that conversation does not happen in a foreign language, does not happen in hushed tones. It's an open conversation, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So this is what I'll leave you with. Everyone thinks that everyone else has it figured out. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that people in their 20s think that people in their 30s have it figured out, and people in their 30s think that married people have it figured out, and married people think that people who have children have it figured out, and the truth is that no one really does. We're all just trying to figure it out together. So let's make sure we start the conversation, and let's start it today. Thank you.